Thank you so much for joining me today, Carol. It's a pleasure to meet you again.
Thank you.
So could you just introduce yourself to the Informs membership?
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, absolutely.
Carol DeZwarte. I have been around Informs for 20 years or so, but I started in government, so the path has been really interesting. And I am on the Executive Forum Committee, the Gala Committee, and Edelman Committee right now.
We appreciate your volunteer work. Thank you.
Yeah, sucker right here.
Yeah.
So I love volunteering.
And that's what you said yes to this interview, so here we are. Tell us how you got into this field.
I'd love to. I started in it. I'm one of those very few people who studied it in college and still does what they studied in college.
Yeah.
So I started in mechanical engineering actually in undergrad. And then I got to the middle of my sophomore year and I hated it. And I really wanted to do it. I just hated the classes and I was really bad at it.
Yeah.
So I searched what else was out there and I found OR. And it really spoke to the fact that I spend so much of my life trying to make things more efficient. Everything from like my spice drawer to the way that I drive to the way that we, run errands. And so it really struck me as where I belonged and has always felt that way ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
To find that. So talk about your analytics experience a little bit with government, military, and then commercial clients, and then maybe an example project from both for those who are looking into careers now.
Yeah, it's been such a crazy ride because in the government and military space, it's the same base problems that I face in tech, but it's all the surrounding environment and the platforms that we work on and the people and the due dates that are completely different. So I feel as a manager, it's a very different skill set I had to learn, even though the technical work is the same.
Right.
So some of the interesting things in the government are like if you're developing a solution that has to go into the classified space, there's a lot of libraries you can't use. And there's pieces of software you can't use because it has to be only approved code that is secure. Well, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I had this amazing idea, but I can't. And so that makes you redefine how you want to get something done. And as opposed to tech, where everything moves so fast and there is no can't and there is no limit on what you use. Like right now, ChatGPT is all we ever talk about in terms of are we doing it? Are we keeping up? And what's called an MVP, a minimally viable product, is huge. Just get something out there. Make sure that it's not dangerous. Make sure that it does at least sum up what the customer needs and then make it better and then make it better.
Yeah.
But get it out there. And when you're talking about like spare parts for an F-14 fleet,
you don't
get it out there maybe isn't like the right attitude.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite projects in military space was working on the peak and next gen work with LMI, which is a government contractor. And we did research on what to do when parts are like the forecasts are crap. And so either infrequently demanded, meaning a traditional math is going to say the forecast is 0, or frequently demanded but really volatile. So all the textbook math just doesn't work. And how do you handle that? And we developed several strategies for doing it, one of which is I share a patent with Toby Bachman, who was my senior fellow and my mentor, on just a hedging strategy. Forecast can't do it. So we put this hedging strategy together because you can't not have that O-ring for that engine. And then similarly, some teammates built the math that can develop their own empirical distributions. And they combined them. And I know at some point after I stopped working on it, they were able to implement that work with DOD and save them, I think it was $400 million in the second year.
Wow.
And they cut down $600 million of unnecessary inventory. And it's phenomenally successful. It was so fun to try to build that program. And what's also really cool is that I haven't kept up in that space because I've moved out to a different industry and different topic. I don't even know if it's still the cutting edge awesome solution.
Right.
It very well could be.
Yeah.
It also could be that all of our advances in AI and ML have allowed us to have something even better. And I have like no pride issues with that because that's what we do.
Yeah.
Right. Something that saved $1 billion 10 years ago may still be that amazing, and we might have something even better because we're never satisfied.
Yeah.
So I haven't really looked, but that's definitely my favorite project from my government time.
Yeah.
And something really interesting that's happened in the non-government space is I worked at Convoy, which is a trucking company, and my team built a classification model for whether a driver was going to arrive at a facility to pick up or drop off a load on time based on GPS pings and other things. And it sucked. Like it wasn't reliable enough.
Oh.
No, and we were trying
it wasn't fun to
build. It just wasn't a good model. And we were trying to say, so you're supposed to arrive at 1. Is the driver going to arrive at 12:40, 12:57, 1:06? And we couldn't do a very good job of it. And so I had just come into this team and I'm like, all right, let's back up. Is that even what we need? Like, did you ask the people who asked for this model, like, what they need? Because isn't all we care about is that they're going to be on time or late? And by the way, if you can't predict on time or late, you sure as hell can't predict what time they're going to arrive. So we backed up, made it simpler, and built a classification model on time or late. And we were pretty good at it. And we were able to dial in the false positives and false negatives for what the customer needed from us. And in that situation, the customer was our customer service teams that needed to answer a call from a facility or a call from a driver. And that made us so much more successful.
So you said then you did on time or late.
Yeah.
Did you, and then as you were mentioning before, you get something out there that works. Did you keep tweaking it to figure out the time then?
We didn't, because we were able to say this is what we needed. This is what our customers needed.
What they wanted. Yep.
And there was an arm of customer service that still actually did need a time. And the old model was good enough for them.
Right.
And one of the things that I always differentiate with research and academia versus industry is that my math skills are not good enough for perfect. Like, they never have been. I've always been the translator from like mad scientist into plain English, but I've never been the one who can do PhD level math. But I'm also the one who understands that the 75% solution for 25% of the cost is the right thing for us to do right now, because there's a high likelihood that in less than a year, we're going to replace it with something else. Mm-hmm. It's like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And in this case, backing up, making it simpler, giving our customers something reliable was what they needed. And then the iteration was, are you okay with the false positives versus false negatives? Is it better for you and our customers if we say we think Carol's going to arrive late and she arrives on time? And then you have called them and said Carol's going to arrive late and you've frustrated your customer? Is that better or worse than us saying she's going to arrive on time and then she arrives late?
Right.
And then you're calling the customer with a different conversation.
Yeah.
You tell me which one of those is more risky to you, and I'll tune my model to give you what you need. And then that was the iteration process.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. So you talked about specifically choosing between an academic and industry career path.
Yeah.
Without giving it all away, give us top 2 or 3 main pieces of advice you would give to early career professionals in that exact spot.
Yeah. First is to be your own advocate. I didn't do that early in my career, and I regretted it. I was like, my work is really good. My customers are always happy. My clients literally ask for, I had a particular set of clients that told my leadership, I want a Carol clone on this project right now. So I was like, clearly I'm doing good work.
Yeah.
But I didn't advocate for myself. And that didn't go well, because I wasn't putting my work in front of the people who needed to see it, to learn that I was a strong resource for my team and for my company. I was just doing the work and doing a good job. So that's the biggest thing.
So what would that have looked like if you would have put your work in front of the right people? What does that mean?
Yeah. So I always assume that managers have good intent, but it's also fair to assume that you never really know what their bandwidth is. And if I have a manager who, especially in the government space, has 15 direct reports, if I give them the ability to not pay attention to what I do, then they're probably going to choose not to. So they might know that my project ends on time, on budget, and they might know that the client was happy. But I haven't shown them anything about the client asking for a Carol clone. I haven't shown them that we were able to do this thing over here that wasn't even in the contract because we were really smart over here and had this extra time to dig. And my manager and my leadership don't know that.
Yeah.
So they kind of don't know what I can bring and how I can help them grow their work. And in the end, a lot of managers are going to want to pull you with them if they think that you can help them grow. Like, even when I'm interviewing, how can I make your job better if you're my potential hiring manager? And I think that it would have been making people aware of my work.
Yeah.
And aware of my customers' happiness with my work and what I was capable of, and also putting myself out there for more opportunity.
Okay.
I just assumed it would come to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You have to go after it.
Yeah.
That was a huge mistake on my part. Second thing is that it's never too late to change your mind. I recently talked with a friend whose daughter is trying to make a college decision. When you're 18 and you're trying to decide where to college, it feels like a wrong move can end your life. It's like, my whole life will be ruined if I go to the wrong school. Well, until you're there, like, I was a year and a half into college and I changed majors and I almost changed schools. But you don't really know that it could be life-changing in a good way, or it could just not be life-changing at all until you're on the other side of the decision. And I think that's a big thing as we make these big decisions or try to figure out what way to go. You can always change your mind. Yeah. I've now owned 2 dream houses in the last 5 years.
That's great.
Because we thought we were going to stay in the first one forever, and then an opportunity arose, and we were like, well, I guess we have changed our mind on whether this is our dream house that we're going to die in.
Yeah.
So now we're in the second dream house that we're going to die in. And I think the third thing is to talk to people. And that really fits into Informs also, but it's to ask what people's experiences are. Never assume your experience is going to match someone else's.
Mm-hmm.
Part of not putting myself out there to my boss, and part of not putting myself out there in the community because I'm so introverted, is that you don't get those connections and you don't learn other people's experience. So those feels like 3.
That is 3. And I like that too, because then just even hearing someone else's experience might give you an idea of a path you didn't know existed. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have you learned anything else new in the last month or so?
So recently I learned that my form of communication and like how I parse words, it can be detrimental to trust in relationships. And my brain just parses words in a sort of a strange way. And I have learned that recently, which is like in the last 15 years, that scientists have been able to use fMRIs and other imaging technology, brain measuring techniques to add neuroscience and hard science to the psychology of how we interact with each other, which I am fascinated by. And I've been reading a book about connection and how connection is sort of the precursor to communication and not the other way around. The cool thing that I specifically learned was that when we are communicating, our defense systems are responding to perceived threats. So if you ask me a question and I pause for 3 seconds before I answer and we're just having a normal communication, then your brain, without you realizing it, thinks, oh, is there a threat? This isn't normal. Mm-hmm. She's pausing. Is she thinking about something else? Is she paying attention? Does she care? Does she want to be here? And we don't even realize that our brains are doing that, but it's a potential perceived threat.
That's interesting. Yeah. Let's see. So you've been an Informs member for roughly 20 some years, right?
Yeah, I started in the early 2000s and presented, I remember, at the annual conference in Seattle. And then I switched to Morris for a while because my work in the government was classified. So I was probably more active in Morris for about 10 years. And then in 2017, came back to Informs when I left the government.
Can you tell us how your continued involvement and volunteering for Informs and just your membership in general has impacted your career and personal life?
Yeah. I'd say there are 2 big things, and in order, it's people and profession. And I know it's like, okay, well, that's the whole possibility of what it could be. As an introvert, I don't meet people very easily. I don't put myself out there. We've talked about the fact that I don't put my work out there to be seen. That makes it harder for me to know where to go or what to do when I'm frustrated at work and I think I might want to change. Or when I wanted to change industries. Having Informs people to talk to has made that so helpful. The more powerful thing is showing up at a conference. And I was doing it 2 days ago. I took a book down and I sat in the lobby because I got here before most people. And I just sat in the lobby for like 4 hours. And every time someone would go by, like, Norm, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful to me because I feel like these are my people.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable and I can explain my challenges. I can explain my heartache. I can explain my opportunities and what my joys are to people who have the same sort of foundational passion.
Yeah.
And that's incredible to have that community. And the other thing from a professional standpoint is I always go home with some sort of nugget of, I should try that.
Yeah.
Or we should try that. Or somebody that I call up a month later, you said you were working on this. And we are doing this poorly.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more? We're not competitors.
Right.
So it's not going to. And that ideas I walk away with have always been really wonderful. Like being on the Edelman Committee has really opened my eyes to the amount of work that goes into some of these things that are just behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. Definitely the people, number one. And then just having that link to what my math nerd passion is.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's awesome. So you mentioned the Edelman Award Committee. This is your first year on the committee, correct?
I think it's my third.
Yeah. Is it a 3-year?
I think
or you just keep coming
back?
That's
a great question. My sense is that you keep coming back until you
don't have time anymore.
Yeah. And so I think there are some people who naturally rotate off as they take other volunteer positions in the org or maybe get busy with a new job. And I think there are also some people who've been on it for quite some time.
Okay.
So my first year, I was a verifier and my team didn't make it to the finals. And then the second year, last year, I helped coach the MIT Janssen COVID team who were phenomenal. And it was such an amazing experience. And then this year, the team that I was involved with as a semifinalist didn't make it to the finals. And so I'm a judge this year for the first time.
Okay.
So I'm excited and intimidated.
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things that I would love everyone to know that I didn't know, and you expect this to be true, but you don't know that it's true because you're not involved, is the amount of honest effort and even like pushing each other and making sure that we're focusing on the right things. It's such a great group of people that really want to make sure that the standard that we hold our Edelman finalists to remains high at all times. And it also means that they're just so inspiring with what they do.
It's always a great competition, no matter what. And I think you're also part of the Informs Mentor Match program as a mentor, correct?
Yeah, I just had my conversation with a mentor for the first time.
So that's your first
it is
mentee.
My first.
How's that going?
It was a really good conversation. And I feel like one of the things that I didn't have when I was in his shoes is someone nudging me to stay engaged. And I didn't know.
Yeah.
And the connections just feel so important. They're not connections. They're not opportunities that we are going to have at any point in our career if we don't meet people outside of our current job. And so it was really helpful for me to sort of proselytize that. Don't do what I did. Do it better. And there's so much room for better from like what I did in the first 10 years of my career. And then it turns out he and I share supply chain simulation experience. And so then we got to talk shop, which is
great.
Awesome too.
So what's the next step there then?
The next step, I totally challenged him. Roger's been called out that I want him to give us feedback. Do you feel welcome as an early career professional?
Okay.
Do you feel like you have resources? Do you feel like we carve niches out for you to be a part of our community and to participate?
Are you meaning Informs, or are you meaning
in both
senior professionals?
Yes.
Both. Okay.
I mean,
share the feedback with Informs so we can make sure we're providing what the early career.
Not that we don't.
Yeah.
And if they feel comfortable, and if they feel like, I wanted him to know that I am open to feedback. And that we are open to feedback because we want to constantly make this a better community for all of our members.
Exactly.
And that was really important to me. And if you have ideas, bring them. Because if you have ideas and you share them out to dinner tonight or at the bar, like the people who need to hear them don't know.
Right.
It's a half hour old, our relationship.
That's going great.
It's good so far.
All right. Now we're going to go into a little bit more about your personal life.
Uh-oh.
Tell us about your pet bird.
His reputation precedes him, apparently. I have a Moluccan cockatoo named Bailey. He's about this big. He's all white. And there are so many reasons that I would recommend against it.
How old is Bailey?
Bailey is 24.
Oh, man.
I've had him for 23 years.
Okay.
And their life expectancy is human. 50 to 100. So I'm going to have him for the rest of my life.
Yep.
Assuming that, I mean, at some point you might find my corpse with like beak marks in it in my house because I didn't give him enough treats. He's a challenge. The large birds are the intelligence of a 4-year-old human with the emotional development of a 3-year-old human.
Intelligence of 40 or 4?
A 4.
4, okay.
So for example, he can undo the spring-loaded locks for his cage. They can generally unscrew things. He can untie knots.
Oh my gosh.
And they're extremely needy.
Mm-hmm.
So you tell me, was it a good life decision to get a thing that is going to be a toddler for the rest of my life? And they're so intelligent that they don't belong in cages.
Do they talk?
They mimic. So they do use their noise-making abilities to make noises that sound exactly like words, but they don't know what they're saying.
Okay.
They do know the associations. So, for example, Bailey knows that when I have a nut in my hand and he wants it, he needs to say, "I'm a good boy."
Oh.
Or if I say, "Can you tell me about Bailey?" I'm a good boy.
Oh.
He knows when I say peekaboo that he should say, "I see you."
Oh my gosh.
But he doesn't know what the words mean.
Right.
Like, he doesn't know what "I'm a good boy" means. He just knows that that's what gets him treats.
Right.
Mom, give me my treat. I said it.
Yeah.
And they're a challenge. Birds are terrible pets. They're expensive. They're loud. They're super cuddly, so you think they're going to be better. And they're very rewarding, as are most pets.
As are toddlers, and then.
Right, but then the toddler eventually moves out, and
exactly.
then maybe someday pays for a vacation to Disney with the grandkids. Like, I'm never going to have that.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Well, he sounds wonderful.
He's a fruitcake.
Yeah. Does he curse?
No.
Just curious.
Our household is very calm. They will have the same energy levels in the households.
Yeah.
So when I'm having a really good day and I'm literally dancing around the kitchen, he's bopping. Yeah, literally bopping. It's adorable.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So besides Bailey, anything else you collect? I know you don't collect birds, but
oh goodness, no. I don't collect. I do have 2 weird hobbies.
Okay.
And the first is that I cross stitch,
Okay.
which is something
could do
that I
that.
think most of our grandmothers did. And I love the fact that it's a very exact process. It's very soothing to me. It's very relaxing. And in the end, my quantitative brain can create something beautiful by following a pattern.
Yeah.
So I can do this exacting thing that ends up with something that feels like art. And
Right.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is that I drive and instruct at what are called high performance drivers education events, which is the most hilarious euphemism that it's driver's education, but it's teaching you how to drive your car like a race car driver on a racetrack. But it's your car.
Okay.
And your car could be
So my Honda Pilot.
Yeah. It could be your Honda Pilot, or your car could be a fully race prepped, like Porsche 911, or anything in between. And we go out there on track and teach you how to drive like a race car driver. And so we got involved in the community. I drove, and then I became an instructor, and it's more fun than it ought to be legal. And it also it's made me a better leader and a better communicator. When I learned how to instruct, I had to learn that what my generation of women was taught, which is, well, I could be wrong, but like always giving an out for why my opinion can reasonably be ignored, because we were taught to be passive. At 150 miles an hour in the passenger seat with a driver who's right foot trigger happy, who asks me, can I do this thing? Can I pass that guy? And I know that he doesn't have time before the next turn. My instinct and what I actually did in instructor training was, I wouldn't. And my instructor at the time, who was teaching me how to instruct, like stopped everything. He's like, no, the answer is not, I wouldn't. You are in charge. If he makes the wrong move, you could die. So could he. So be firm. And then afterwards, come back and talk about it. And that's really changed my communication. Sometimes it has to be, nope. And then this is why. I never communicated like that before. So it's been a lot of learning.
Like you said, 2 different hobbies.
Yeah, very different hobbies.
Okay, so what does your typical weekend look like? Are you just cross stitching and
driving,
race driving, Honda Pilots?
Yeah. Well, if not those two, my weekends are very boring, and that's how I like them. I may go for a walk. I may cross stitch on a Friday night. I usually bug out early on Fridays. Most of my team is East Coast, so I would bug out at 3 or 4 because I feel like I'm cheating the system. And I feel like I'm being a hooky, and it feels really good. Yeah. And then Saturday is usually a 2 to 4 hour bike ride. And then Saturday night is usually eating something that I could not excuse without having just burned 700 calories. So like lots of cake, for example. And then Sunday nights, we'll stick hobbies in the middle. And then Sunday nights, I generally work a little bit to make up for having left early on Friday. And then I'm ready for the week. But that Friday bugging out early is just strangely empowering for me.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get summer hours.
Oh.
We get a couple hours early on Fridays, just the summer. But it's really nice.
Yeah. I love that.
Okay. So you live in Seattle.
I do.
I need to ask, Starbucks or Dunkin'?
This one's made harder by the fact that I moved to Seattle from Boston, where Dunkin' started. And
so you really are the expert.
I'm not.
First
of all, I don't drink coffee.
Okay.
So that actually, for people who know those two, that's going to give away my answer. The deciding factor for me, though, is that I don't drink coffee, and Starbucks makes the most amazing peppermint hot chocolate.
Okay.
Period. Full stop.
That works.
So it has to be Starbucks for me.
Yeah. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I had so much fun.
Yay.